so much, Vicky. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, all about the strength of an official rep during clearing and results and of an effective official rep. I'll be showing you how to do that today. I hope you're all doing well, and we'll just get started on introducing ourselves first off. So next slide, please. So hello everyone, my name is Grace. I'm a community engagement manager here at the Student Room. So just to introduce a little bit about myself, I joined the Student Room back in 2019 and I work primarily on site with our student community to help them make kind of informed decisions and peer-to-peer connections, primarily in the pathways section of the site. So looking at universities, alternative pathways like apprenticeships, and also careers. I also help universities and our clients, such as yourselves, to understand how best to interact with students, particularly on the Student Room, and the best ways to get the best engagement from your official rep. And I'll pass over to Oscar.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Oscar and I'm a client success advisor. So I also joined in 2019 and I've worked with our clients to ensure success in all areas of our campaigns and their campaigns too. But as well, I help train and manage and support all the official reps here on site. And so I'll be able to help you make the most out of your official rep tool.
Thank you, Oscar. And just a little bit of housekeeping now. So just before we kind of get into the meat of everything, if you have any questions at all during our presentation, if you'd like to pop them in the Q&A box, which is down at the bottom of the panel at Zoom there for us, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so we can answer any questions that you have then. If you have any immediate technical concerns or anything like that, if you pop them in the chat, we have people on site, on standby, sorry, to help with anything like that, and they'll be able to support you there. So hopefully that will make sense and we'll kind of get into everything now. So having a quick look at an overview, I'll pass over to Oscar to kind of go through what we'll be talking about today.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Grace. And yeah, as an overview of today's webinar, so we're going to sort of be focusing on how students are feeling right now, but then also sort of a recap of how clearing went last year, taking a look back at the official rep activity as well. And then I'm also going to be doing a training and some recommendations for results day this year, plus also some key takeaways and some food for thought for clearing 2022. And then we're also going to save some time at the end for any sort of questions, comments and feedback as well.
Okay, so first off, we're going to take a look at how students are feeling currently at the moment. So looking at what we've been seeing over the last academic year and what we're expecting to see coming over the next couple of months. So next slide, please. So very quickly, just to have a look back at how students were feeling last year, just before clearing. We'll go in more in depth into clearing and what happened last year in a little bit, but I just wanted to go over how students were feeling roughly about this time last year. So the main concern there was the impact of teacher assist grades on their overall grades, obviously something which is not the case this year, and we're looking at how exams are going to be affecting students right now. And then also how they were going to receive their results was a big question that we were seeing quite a lot at the moment, in person or remotely. Again, it's unlikely to be a popular topic this year, but there were always popular results topics that were discussed both this year, last year, and will continue to be discussed in the future. And popular topics always include things like what time are results released, what is an embargo, how does that work, when will I find out if I got into my firm choice university, how does it work in terms of what comes first, grades or understanding whether you got into university or not. There's always general nerves and worries around results days, and then this year grade boundaries and their impact will also be something which is particularly pertinent. So last year, in the lead up to results, students were feeling kind of very mixed, but a little bit more confident. And we also saw kind of year 13 on-site activity kind of really rise around results week last year, and posting was up, between 20 and 24%. Year on year within these forums, showing that students were really wanting to talk about how these nerves and worries and what is it that they need to know before results day were impacting them. Next slide, please. So he was a little bit of a word cloud from 2021. So what we saw over the results period last year, we're expecting a kind of similar sentiment this year, alongside a lot more students worried about, particularly exam results and grade boundaries. So I mentioned grade boundaries a second ago. Grade boundaries will likely be a very popular topic this year, as it's something students won't have experienced before, having not taken GCSEs, and how much of an impact grade boundaries have had in the press as well, with kind of grade boundaries being set at a certain level between 2019 and 2021, and students having kind of less control and understanding over how they work, in terms of it's not just down to their performance as a overall cohort on the paper, it's down to a variety of different factors that will impact how their grades will turn out in the end. So we're likely to see a lot of discussion around grade boundaries this year, but clearing is always a popular topic, and we're expecting to see a similar interest in clearing, if not higher interest in clearing this year. Next slide. So right now, students are feeling a lot of worry. So we're coming up to the end of exam period right now. Clearing will open on the 5th of July, and students are feeling a lot of concern and worry about how their exams have gone. There are also a lot of worries around at the moment surrounding offers. So as we've seen, offers were coming out fairly late this year. There are a lot of universities that were making offers kind of right up until the deadline, and then also students not receiving as many offers as they were potentially hoping for. Competition is a lot fiercer this year with a lot more applicants. So there is a lot of worries around what to do next, especially if they didn't get all the offers they wanted. Again, usual concerns around potentially switching firm and insurance choices, looking at different options in clearing altogether. A lot more discussion around using clearing to their advantage this year, and making sure that they are making the most of the options that are there and available to them, especially if they didn't receive the offers that they were hoping for earlier on in the year. And then on top of all of that, concern for cost of living, making friends, loneliness when they get to university. It's building up for a really stressful and busy day on the 18th of August. So we want to help students as much as we can, and help you find the students to support as well. They're all over site. They're looking for advice and help and kind of empathy and understanding, and this is the perfect place to kind of position yourself in and showcase the support that you as a person and as an institution have for the students and what they're going through. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned just now, in terms of additional pressures this year surrounding cost of living, finances, the negative press around student loans and the increase in interest, anxiety, and a massive concern around loneliness epidemic at university, there is so much pressure on students this year, alongside, just getting the results in the first place. And students are already beginning to talk about these concerns, and you may wish to preempt these concerns in the build up to results day to really showcase, the support that you can provide these students, not only now, but in the future as well. So we ran a poll. I'm afraid it's not particularly clear on this, but we'll send these slides out. So you'll make sure you have links to all of the polls and threads within this presentation, where we asked kind of year 13s what are you're kind of worrying about in terms of university right now, and how you'll perform at university and how you'll do at university. And the most popular option by far was making friends at university, and that was the green one there. So you can see nearly over 45% of students saying that making friends obviously is always a big concern. But also mental health and well-being, finances, and doing well on their course as well is something that were key topics around how students were feeling about and worrying about going to university this year. So with this, the key communication techniques to remember is kind of a personalized communication plan, which is preempting concerns. So communication with students, and not too much, not too little, is always the most important thing here, but keeping them in the loop about what it is that could happen in the future, and preempting some of the concerns that we know that they've got already is really helpful and showcases you as a supportive institution. highlighting how to access support services, and if possible, proactive initial conversation starters to take away stigma or insecurity on site and in other communications will be really handy to ensure that you are getting out there and showing students that you can help them and that you do have lots of support services available, and how you can access them without, you know, kind of just going, here's a number, here's an email address, here's a place, turn up. You know, a good conversation starter or a list of different questions that you can start with is always a good one to get students talking. And then human communication as much as possible. So if you have limited capacity at the moment within your institution, see if it's possible to direct it to external support. There are lots of charities out there that are supporting students at the moment. Student Space are a great option, and trying to put human communication at forefront of communications is really important. Next slide, please. So what do students need for you right now? So we recently ran a poll over the weekend asking students how confident they were feeling that they will achieve the grades that they need to get into their firm choice university. And it's very small, I apologise for this, but the first one was going, you know, I think I've achieved the grades that I need to go to university. I think I've met my offer. The second option there is I think sorry, the first one was exceeded the grades, the second one was I think I've just met my grades, and then the red one there is I think I've missed my grades for my university offer. And nearly 50% of students have voted and said that they think that they're going to miss their grades this year, which we've seen, you know, that there is some kind of negativity around at the moment, but even that this shocked us in terms of how many students are not feeling confident about their exams right now, that they do not think that they've met their university offer and they're unsure of where to go next. So this is where we can really support students over the next few months and into clearing and results to make sure that they have several different options available to them, that they research these options and they know where to go if the worst did happen and they did miss their offer in August and on results day. So clear and timely communication is key. The supportive tone this year, I think, is going to be incredibly important. A human connection of understanding that the last 3 years have been really, really difficult, and now to go straight into exams and then feel like you haven't met your university offer and the worry and concern over that for the next few months, we need to be as empathetic and supportive as possible. Really good signposting and quick answers is also key. Students are looking for quick support. They need help as soon as possible, and they're looking to kind of get that from you. Help with making backup plans will be key. So lots of students kind of putting questions out there saying, I don't know what to do next. I'm not sure what to do. I really feel like I've messed up or I haven't met my grades. What can I do now? This is your chance to showcase, you know, how to make a good backup plan, different researching options, showcasing that you're there for students if they need you. Up-to-date clearing information as much as possible, and Oscar will talk a little bit more about that in a bit. I think I have a little bit about that too. And as I mentioned, a calming presence on site as much as possible. If you can, really bringing those concerns down and helping students make real and confident backup plans for the future. Next slide. Okay, so I mentioned we'd go over a quick recap of Clearing 2021 and specifically around official rep activity. Next slide. So as I said earlier, exams were cancelled last year and teacher assessed grades were introduced. This brought with it a lot of concern around grade unfairness, a higher percentage of top grades, which is seeping into this year surrounding the grade boundaries conversation that I mentioned. A lot of concern around students getting incredible grades last year, and this year students being kind of put down potentially artificially by the grade boundaries, and they're worried that they won't be able to reflect their achievements through the grades they've received this year. Last year, there was also a lot of confusion around the appeals process. Again, this year, something that we're expecting as well, again, because they haven't had to go through an appeals process with GCSEs, and also it's still not 100% clear exactly how this process will work yet. So we want to make sure that we're supporting students with that if they need that as much as possible. An oversubscription for medicine applicants last year, with place swaps happening as well. Medicine has been extremely competitive this year. We've seen a big increase in the conversations happening around medicine on site, as places and applicants do not match. A lot more applicants compared to places as usual, but again, a big increase. So a lot more discussion around medicine, again, expected this year. And then students also using the student room to search for contact details and to discuss different options due to disappointment or a change of heart. So we'll expect to see a similar level of conversation around that again this year, which is why having an up-to-date clearing thread is really useful. And again, we'll talk about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the data for clearing 2021. This data was taken from the 1st of July to the 31st of August last year. Next slide. So we had over 16 million sessions on site, with over 320,000 posts. So lots and lots of students coming on site over those 2 months in the build up to results day, and after results day as well, asking lots and lots of questions all about exactly what they can do, where they can go, how they can achieve what they want to achieve, and just general worries and concerns. We also had 573 posts made by official reps, which is fantastic, and they were seen over 1.3 million times by students. So that's really useful to know that, you know, we always say in our official rep training that, you know, for every time that you write a post, it's seen by, you know, hundreds more. And this really does showcase that your posts are reaching huge amounts of students. Even if you're only interacting with one student on site, it's being seen by so many more. So really important to make sure that your posts have as much information as possible and really showcase you as an institution. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass over to Oscar now to go through more about the official rep.
Yeah, cheers, Grace. And so, yeah, we're going to talk about how you can make the most out of your official rep account. So yeah, next slide, please. So I think just a brief overview on what we're going to touch on. So we're going to talk about the best practice for your official rep account when posting on site over clearing. We're then going to also talk about how you can monitor your own forum, plus also getting involved in conversations across the rest of your site, across the rest of the site. And then also we're going to look at example posts from official reps in the past. And then we're also going to talk about how you can best support students this year during clearing. So yeah, next slide, please. You guys.
So on site, kind of having a look at some of the stuff I've recently just spoken about, there are more conversations about applications and results and students really exploring their options, contingency planning, looking for that advice and reassurance. As we have mentioned before, questions and concerns around clearing and the application process in general will be very, very popular again this year. Again, with specific queries about accommodation, living in different cities, changing courses, making friends, all of the usual kind of typical questions that come through around the results period and clearing period as well. And we're expecting kind of an increase in these conversations as students are looking at all the different options available to them over summer to get prepared for clearing and results day coming up in August. So we really recommend to start increasing your site presence from now on, and to be around as much as possible so that people are aware that you're there, so that when it comes to results day, you've already been a supportive presence on site, and we can also help by tagging you in to particular conversations if we know that you'd be of help and support, and if you're around more often, then we can get you into those conversations quickly, and being that supportive and authoritative voice is really key here. Next slide.
Yeah, and so just talking about your forum. So your forum is where you can be able to update and monitor your own sticky threads. And for those of you who don't know what sticky threads are, is essentially a thread that is pinned at the very top of your forum. So these will be ones such as FAQs, ask a current student, accommodation options and wellbeing tips, revision tips, and so on. And yeah, on your forum, you'll be able to answer all sort of questions that are posted on there. As well, you'll be able to congratulate those who have said they've applied, but also received an offer. And so why, you may ask? Well, it's to build and maintain your community. Really want to try and create a positive perception of your university and really encourage discussion on site as well. And also, yeah, dedicate some time to responding to those who are applying in 2023 as well. Next slide, please.
Okay, so something that is really key over the results day period is helping students make informed decisions about clearing and the options that you have available. And to do that, creating a clearing thread within your forum is really helpful to ensure that students can get access to all that information really, really quickly. I mentioned about signposting being key and making sure that your contact details are available, because we know that students will be searching the student room for these contact details. This is the place to do it. So on the 5th of July, that's normally when we recommend that universities start this thread. Create the thread in your forum and provide those contact details. Provide a little bit of information as well around clearing and how it works for your institution, what you'll be doing, how you'll be doing it, if you're doing any kind of open days, campus tours, anything like that as well, that people can sign up to or book into over the summer period. If they wanted to come and get a little bit of a feel for your university beforehand, that is a good place to do it as well. Make it really clear here that you're happy to answer questions about the process online, popping in kind of human details as well. Grace and Oscar will be around to support on the day. It's also really helpful just so students feel like they're talking to a real human being. A key thing this year is that human connection and really supportive and empathetic connection that a human to human contact has. So making sure that you're kind of really showcasing that you're real humans behind this and you want to help and support them as much as possible. We'll then add this into our clearing mega thread, which sits in our applications and UCAS forum, similar to your applicant threads. If you have an applicant thread with us, for students to easily find this information and access it. We'll also make it very clear that you, as an official rep, will be manning this thread so that they'll know they'll get answers from the university specifically. We do set these up for all universities, but we do also have a separate area at the top which says it's manned by official reps. So here's an example of some of the clearing thread discussion that can happen. Again, we'll send these slides out so you can access these links. They're all linked through the presentation, where students were saying, and talking about clearing and the different options that may be available. I mentioned that in this thread in particular, they're saying kind of, I'm sorry that you've had to wait for information around clearing, and there's not much they can do at the moment, but they'll be able to support that student closest to the time. They were asking about different options that were available during clearing. They also provided their name at the bottom, said that they would get back to them, made sure they get back to them, and that continued the conversation nicely, with the student feeling supported, knowing that that person is reminded of them and is within that thread, so they can go back anytime and check for any updates. It reassures other people reading this thread as well that they can rely on that institution for providing those updates, saying that they'll definitely get back to them and support them throughout the process, so that even if they're asking a question now, if they need that help on results day, they will get that help. That's also really key.
Yeah, so I think getting involved in conversation across the site is also encouraged, as well as your forum. So I think I'm just going to give you a few examples here. So yeah, if you go to the next slide, please. But before that, I think we need to do a quick poll. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly read this example, and then you have two options to choose from. And yeah, then we'll do a little bit of a poll to see which is the right answer. So I'm just going to read it out for you all now. I've just finished my mocks and I've received all my results in June. In computer science, I achieved an A-star overall. In maths and physics, I achieved C's, which are poor from me. Is there any way for me to increase my predicted grades before I apply to uni? And if there isn't, what good unis could I apply to and get accepted to with around an A-star, C, a C? I'm also eligible for contextual offers. So I'll just give you guys a minute or two just to read both of these examples, and then we'll just do a little poll to see which is the right answer. Also, yeah, vote away, everyone.
If you need to, you can move the box. If you need to keep continuing to read, if you just move it by the top, you can move it to one side because that helped me.
I'll just end that now, Oscar, for you. Pop the results on.
Am I able to see the results? Perfect. Yeah, so well done to those of you who have picked answer 1. That is the correct answer. And I think just a bit of detail as to why that is the correct answer. I think what's so good about this response is firstly, actually, they just asked a follow-up question by asking them, what are you thinking on studying? I think it's really good to ask sort of follow-up questions, create a discussion. But then as well, they've actually gone into real detail. And you can also see here, they've actually added a hyperlink here at the end, which is a really good way to send information across. So yeah, well done to those of you who have picked number 1. That's the correct answer. So I think after this, I'll show a few more examples. So yeah, next slide, please. I think just one thing to sort of touch on before I do is on how to find conversations on site as well as your own forum. So here we've just attached a few of extra forums for you to have a look at. So things like the applications clearing and UCAS forum, you know, when it comes to those important times of year, such as results day or applications deadlines, these forums are very sort of active. So it's great to have a look over there. And that's the same for both A-level and BTEC forums too. But if you just want to have a general discussion with users on site, then we would recommend having a look at the University Live forum. And then also, yes, the results day and Clearing Plus FAQ forums are very active, like I said, in those important times of year. Obviously, the past 2 years, the coronavirus impact schools and exams forums have been very active. And then lastly, the Uni Courses forum. If your university does specialise in a particular course, then it may be worth having a look at these forums there. All these forums you'll be able to access at the end of this webinar through the slides. So yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, a few examples for you all, and a lot of these are going to be sort of helping applicants on making informed decisions. So this first one, for instance, comes from the Liverpool Hope University official rep account, and it's about helping a student understand their options. And I think what they do really well here is actually they just provide information relevant to what the student is wanting to know, but they also sort of continue the conversation based on what the student is asking. So yeah, as you can clearly see, they've really gone into depth here and they've answered the question clearly. Yeah, next slide, please. The second example comes from the Loughborough University official rep account, and it's about changing courses over clearing. And I think what's really good about this response is actually it's just totally honest, and they even confirm that there won't be any places over clearing. But what they do is actually they provide all the relevant contact information. You can see here at the end, they've actually added an email address and a telephone number. And this is really important because not just the user who's seen the response will be able to access it, but as Grace was saying earlier, like all the other millions of people will be able to see that contact information as well, which is really important. Next slide, please. So this one comes from the University of Reading official rep account, and it's about helping students with the process. Obviously, clearing and the whole application process is quite a difficult time for people. But what they do actually is they reassure the student that it's still possible to arrange accommodation and finance options. It also recommends in registering interest for clearing. What they do as well is that they ask a question in response and they sign off their name. So as we spoke about earlier, signing off your name is really important. It will really sort of humanize the account, make it feel a lot more relatable. The user won't feel like they're talking to a computer screen. They're actually talking to someone that represents your university. So that's really good. And yeah, next slide, please. So this comes from the University of Liverpool student rep account. And so what you are going to get quite a lot on site is users comparing 2 different universities. And in this instance here, they actually give the students other factors to consider. They also sort of refer to advice already given in the thread. And as well, they actually help them make a balanced decision and offer the opportunity to ask further questions. And offering to ask further questions is really good. Like I said, you really want to sort of create a discussion and a conversation with the user and try and remain as impartial as you can. Next example, please. So this one is regarding on a user contemplating on taking a gap year. And I think EdShield responded really well, because what they do is actually they sort of help the student figure out if it's the right choice for them. But as well, they sort of reassure them that age isn't a concern. And they're not trying to convince them of anything. And I think that's really important. You don't want to try and come across that you're trying to influence them or advertise your university. Like I said, you really want to be as neutral as you can. On to the next example. Likewise, this one comes from another Loughborough University account, and actually in this one, I think it's really important for as many posts as you can to try and come across as compassionate and supportive as you can. And you know what Loughborough do really well here is they really empathise with the applicant, they normalise the student's experience, and they come across as really sort of encouraging and supportive. You know, it's absolutely fine to fail, and I think actually for students, you really want to sort of make it clear that, you know, it's a total normal thing for students to go through this. So yeah, this is a really good example. On to the next example, please. And so this one is regarding on how to deal with sort of perceptions of a university. So this one comes from the University of Bradford rep account. And so what they do actually, they just provide positive anecdotal feedback. They also give more detail about the degree that the student is interested in. And as well, they offer the opportunity to ask further questions. And, you know, if you do have your own examples, or you might have heard someone's own anecdote from whether a student or a tutor, then by all means do so. You really want to try and make that effort to give the best answer as possible. So yeah, I think it's a good example in, you know, actually showing that. Yeah, next slide, please. This one is actually being honest about mistakes. So this comes from the University of Exeter student recruitment team. And I think what they've done is actually they've just been totally honest. They've actually addressed the mistake publicly so others know it's been dealt with. And, you know, it's really important to sort of try and create a positive perception about university. So owning up to mistakes will only sort of enhance that reputation on site. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, lastly, I think it's also just important to get involved in site-wide conversations. So not just on your forum, but outside your forum too. And this is found in the UniLife forum from the Staffordshire University rep. And I think what they do here is actually they really reassure the student. They even share their own personal experience where appropriate. And yeah, more examples actually be like this in my Wednesday sessions, which are once a month. And yeah, I think, you know, sharing your own personal experience is absolutely fine. If you were a student previously or you used to work there, but then by all means actually share them, because it makes it a lot more relatable for the users on the site to read. Next slide, please. So obviously I've talked on what to do, now what not to do. And I think one thing I have to make very clear is you really just want to advertise what you have available. You don't want to mislead or misinform users on site. So just be completely open and honest as you can. But as well, as I said, you really want to be empathetic. And I think by doing that, you don't want to ignore the struggle that students are going through at this important time of the year. And I think, you know, posting communications that read like ads isn't helpful at all. I think users will as well be able to tell a mile off if something reads like an ad. And well, that won't help your perception on site either. And then as well, you know, posting a thread in a random forum with no context, that as well isn't helpful to students. You really actually want to try and help, you know, answer their questions, and, you know, doing that won't help either. So I'm going to show a couple of bad examples. So next slide, please. So yeah, here's what not to do. And here's some example posts. So this first one is, I'm currently undecided between this university and another university. And so what not to say is something like, we may be a little biased, but we can't deny that our university is absolutely brilliant. I think this doesn't actually answer the question. You really want to try and remain as neutral and as impartial as you can. And I think this response here doesn't do that. The next example is someone asking, I'm holding an insurance of mathematics and computer science and can't decide. And they've responded, we're currently ranked this in this table, and we have this student satisfaction rating. Very similar to the previous post, actually, just doesn't answer the question. You really want to, like I said, try and actually be as neutral as you can, and don't try and come across as trying to influence them or anything. The next example, someone said, I have a clearing offer to study this at this university. And what not to say is saying something like, I've graduated from this university a month ago and studied this for years. There are so many fun events held here throughout the year. Another one, it just doesn't answer the question. Like I said, you actually want to really focus on what the student is asking and what they're actually wanting to know. And, saying things like where many fun events are doesn't answer that. The last example I was going to show is actually someone's asking, this year things were not perfect, but there were no distractions and I worked my best, but I still failed. And they responded, have you considered doing a foundation year instead? Give our clearing hotline a call. As I was talking about earlier, guys, you want to come across as empathetic and supportive as you can, and offering them a foundation year isn't something that's going to help them with that. So I think, as you can clearly see here, all these responses are very similar. It doesn't answer what they're trying, the students asking. You really try and want to focus on what they're actually asking instead. So that's actually what not to do. On to the next slide, please. So we're going to do another poll. So similar to the previous poll, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read this post, and then I'll give you guys a bit of time to read the answers, and then we'll do a little poll to see which one is right. So the post reads out, when do I get to know what universities are available through clearing? So it gives you guys just a minute or so just to read through these examples, and then we'll vote to see which one is right. I'll just move the poll as well. Cool, let's see what people have voted for. Awesome. Wow, that's a really good response there. 97% of you have got that right. So well done to those of you that have. So as a reason to why this is the correct answer, I think firstly with the formatting, what they've done is actually they've mentioned the user, so they'll get a notification to see that they replied. I think secondly, what they've done, they've actually added a link, which is also really useful. And they've even asked like follow-up questions as well, which can be really helpful, sort of create a discussion with the user. So yeah, well done to those of you who picked question 4. Moving on. So I think just a little response checklist to sort of summarize everything. So like I said, the certain do's you have to do is definitely have a friendly tone of voice, talk to them as if they're a human being, and yeah, come across as really empathetic. It's a very stressful time with them this time of year, and really try and check to understand and have directly answered their question. And by doing that, asking questions in return will really make a good impression on the user too. As I also said, sign off with your name. That will really humanize the account. And just lastly, before you hit send, read the post back to yourself to make sure you've answered the question correctly. And then, yeah, a couple don'ts as well. Don't include unnecessary irrelevant links, going back to a Facebook group. Try and keep the post as relevant as possible. And then, yeah, obviously avoid any sort of copying and pasting. The same response to multiple users as well, because I think that will be quite evident on the site, and that won't help your perception on site either. Next slide, please. So there's other ways as well you can support your official reps. So any sort of questions, advice you might need on site, you can always get in contact with us, either in the official rep lounge or the official rep feedback thread. So just tag either Grace or I, and we'll be able to answer your question as soon as we can. And then, yeah, as well as I said, sticking threads, keyword rep alerts, logging in any queries, but also just email all that into the client services team, and we'll get it back to you as soon as we can. And then, yeah, if you want any sort of best practice or on-site reminders, you'll be able to access that on the resources page on TSR Matters. You'll be able to get some cool videos and also be able to access bespoke training and any sort of advice you may need. And then lastly, if you want to monitor your engagement on your UPP, then have a discussion with your account manager and they'll be able to give that for you too. So on to the next slide, please.
Cool, thank you, Oscar. So now we're going to look at some kind of key takeaways from everything we've spoken about during our presentation today, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So next slide, please. So firstly, a key takeaway is to create that clearing thread on the 5th of July for questions and to encourage discussion. So I mentioned about the clearing thread earlier on in this webinar. It is the key place to answer any and all queries around clearing. And as I said, we do give a lot of promotion to our clearing mega thread, which is where we list out all the universities that have a clearing thread. And being involved in that means that students will be able to access your clearing thread quickly and easily. And also be able to get in contact with you whenever they need to. And we advise setting this up on or around the 5th of July as that zone clearing opens, just for any initial early queries that come through, and you can support students right from the beginning, again, showcasing that you're available, around, on site and able to support them. Next slide, please. So making sure you have a presence on site is really key, and congratulating every student that mentions you, answering any questions that they may have, anything that comes through. It's really key to try and keep on top of your notifications during this period. Being quick and responsive is something that students are looking for, and when they come onto site, they'd like a quick answer as much as possible. Obviously, it's not always possible, but as much as you can to try and get on there and showcase that you're around and available, so that when it comes to results day, they know that you've been on site, they know that they'll get a quick response from you, and they'll be able to ask you more and more questions as it comes to it, and key questions about, for example, things like their application or clearing. And then also just having a general presence on site is really key. As Oscar said, getting involved in conversations across site showcases your institution, and a huge part of the official rep is around brand identity and brand perception. We want to make sure that students, even if they're not necessarily considering your university right now initially, know that you are a supportive, empathetic and quickly responsive university, so that they know that if it comes to it on results day and they need support, that you'll be able to help them regardless of their query or questions. And then other students who are reading this, whether it's on results day or in the future, can also see how you are as a university, how you support students, how you want to be perceived by students, and can make informed decisions based off that. So making sure you have a presence around the site is really key. Next slide. Helping students make a balanced decision and supporting them in their choices is also an important part of making the most of an effective official rep over the results period. Oscar mentioned repeatedly about the importance of reading their question, answering their question, and not being biased towards your own institution. It sounds a bit strange sometimes to not advertise your institution, it actually works out better not to advertise. It's a strange one to think about, but with the way that our forum works, if you are there helping students make a balanced decision, you're there being supportive, you're there to showcase that you care about students and what it is that they need, that will infinitely go down better with our community than just advertising your own courses and advertising what you do. Obviously, you know, we like it if you can include a link and signpost students to something where it's relevant and where they've asked for this information, but adding in unnecessary information, unnecessary links, posting threads around site which just advertise your courses, your open days, webinars, anything like that, anything that's not around supporting students and with the decisions that they need to make, the choices that they need to make, and anything that comes across as too much of an advert won't go down well during results day period. So helping those students make balanced decisions, even if it's not about your institution, helping them to make those balanced decisions so you can showcase your supportive perceptions is really important. Next slide.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as well to sort of check the quality of your response. You know, it can really impact the applicant engagement. So yeah, read back your post, make sure to yourself that it's all okay, and go back through the response checklist as well. Yeah, next slide, please. And yeah, as we were saying earlier, contact us if you need any additional support or advice, and we'll be able to get back to you as soon as we can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. I'm now going to go to our Q&A box and answer any questions that have come through. If you have any questions now as well, please do feel free to add them into the Q&A or the chat, and we can answer those for you now. We have about 10 minutes where we'll be able to answer any questions that you have, so please do pop them in. I'll start off with the first question. Someone saying, you mentioned not too much communication, not too little communication. Can you expand on this? What would you consider too much or too little? And I think here, key thing to consider is what you need to get across. So too much communication and too little communication is all dependent on the information and the importance of the information that you're trying to communicate. So students don't mind too much communication when it's to do with important updates with their application, for example, and would not like too little communication when it's to do with that. But when it comes to kind of information about starting the course, starting at university, they would not like too much communication before results day, but that would change after results day. So it all depends on the information that you're trying to get across. So we recommend taking a look at the information that you're trying to put across. So thinking about the time and the timeline for that information. So, you know, when is it that we want to talk to students about this? We know that engagement may not be as high before results day or after results day, depending on that content. So it will impact the number of updates that we give, the number of information posts that we make, and that's where the content is really key in this. I recommend not bombarding, just generally. Too much communication means that when important updates do come through, they are often missed because they are used to getting so much communication through that actually it feels overwhelming, and it's kind of like a learned behaviour to ignore that. Realistically, when we have important updates that we want to get across through to students, it's very much time dependent. Normally around once a week can be quite helpful in the lead up to results. We don't want to bombard them with daily or, you know, every other day communications, but we want to make sure that they're getting through all the important information they need, and regular check-ins closer to results day is also supportive and helpful. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. So moving on to Matthew's question. So for university comparison questions, how would you recommend advising students without sounding like you have a bias? I don't know, Oscar, if you wanted to mention anything on that.
Sure. No, great question. I think what's really important when answering questions such as this is actually just be trying to help what the student might need to consider. So maybe say to them, you know, have you thought about the location? Have you thought about the course? Have you thought about what the city's like? I think asking questions such as this, like a follow-up one, will only come across not biased at all, because actually you're just trying to help answer their question. As well, it's absolutely fine saying, you know, that it's a good city to live in, but I think you don't want to try and come across that, oh, we're better than this uni. You just want to try and be honest and as helpful as you can. So yeah, I think doing like a list of bullet points on maybe things to think about when considering to this certain university is definitely one to worth ask. So hopefully that answers it all okay, but please let me know if not. This next question, UCAS have publicly said they're expecting a lot of disgruntled students this year, since many have not done formal exams before and may not get the results they expect. How do you think we should best support students with this on your forum? Grace, I might pass this one on to you, but let me know if you want me to answer as well.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so it is going to be difficult this year. So as I mentioned earlier, students are, you know, really concerned about the impact of their exams at the moment on their university application. I do think that backup options will be more thoroughly explored over the next coming weeks because of this. So as I mentioned, around trying to get that information out over the next few weeks to try and showcase that you can support them with making these backup plans, backup options, even if it's not to do with your university, just helping them to make those options is really key, so that it can showcase that you're able to support and you have knowledge and support around that. In terms of disgruntled students on site, I think acknowledging concerns, acknowledging how they're feeling is really important. So there will be a lot of panic, there probably will be a lot of anxiety, a lot of students kind of just throwing out a lot of emotive terms, and I think acknowledging the difficulties they have faced over the last few years will be really key. It's important to make sure that you are as clear in your communication as possible. So a lot of students have experienced varying degrees of communication over the last few months from universities, and so to make sure that your communication is clear is really important. Any kind of grey areas in communication will just cause more panic and more concern. So trying to be as clear as possible, even if it's not good news that you're delivering, it is really important, and having that empathetic side of being, you know, that we understand how difficult this must have been for them, and you know, that we're sorry that we're unable to support any further in this instance. But if you need help making backup plans, options, you can help support them with that, is probably the best way to go ahead with this. But it is important to prepare for the eventuality that there will be some disgruntled students on site, but acknowledging their concerns as much as possible and being as clear as you can is key with this. I hope that answers your question, but let me know if you have anything else. Any other questions at all? No? Okay, no worries at all. Well, you can always get in contact with us. I think if you go to the next slide, Vicky, there might be some more information. Please do feel free to get in contact with Oscar or myself if you have any questions at all. Also through the client services email as well for any concerns or queries around the official rep that you need some advice or support with. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope that you found this useful, and hopefully you'll be able to use your official rep over the results period leading up into clearing with confidence, and feel like you're able to support as many applicants as possible and really showcase your university in the best light. So thank you again for coming. Any other questions, let us know. But yeah, that's it from us. Thank you.